Hi teachers, the purpose of this video is to walk you through day 5 of week 2 of our unit Growing Stronger. This is the week where students have been reading the short story Sweet Difficult Sounds, and on this day they put together all of the information from the text and their own thinking to create a project about sweet difficult sounds. So in this video we'll go through the steps for each part of the lesson. We'll also talk about ways to differentiate and to scaffold for the diverse students within your group. And as usual, below your slides, you may find some notes for teachers with additional tips and suggestions. For this slide deck, they will mostly be on the slide with the project. So here you'll find additional notes for how you can implement today's lesson. So let's go ahead and start overviewing the slides and the steps for this session. So you'll begin with the introduction slide. You have your essential question here that you can review with students, and then your lesson objectives below in the pink box, and whatever routine you've built in with your students to review the lesson objectives, feel free to do that. Just make sure if there's any need for clarification that you add some explanation so students understand kind of the skills and big ideas that they are working towards for today. After your introduction slide, you'll have a review. Here again, you'll kind of review the lesson objectives from earlier in the week with students and jog their memory about what they have been doing for the past few sessions. You'll also find here a link to the text, Sweet Difficult Sounds. If you click this, it'll open into a PDF. And you'll also find links to the academic vocabulary that you've been using throughout the week, invisible and practice. And you might want to review these two terms with students as you go through this lesson. So once you've done the review, you'll move into the Activate slide. This is a version of the See, Think, and Wonder exercise that's become part of the routine. Students will look at these 3 images, which are screenshots from their after reading activities. And then they're going to do these reflection questions. What do you see? What do you remember? And what do you wonder? And this again is to activate their prior learning from earlier in the week. One way that we've done this to scaffold and differentiate and add some more supports is to provide an example or a model for students before they begin to generate their own thoughts about how they could respond to the prompts here. And of course, you have here your sentence starter box, and students can use these frames to start to craft their own responses. So after the Activate slide, you'll have a model. The purpose of this slide is to show students an example of what they're going to be working towards in their project for today. So the way that we frame this is telling students, this is an example of what you're going to work towards. This is what your finished product would look like as well. You can go through the content of the model. At the top is your essay question. Should we always try to overcome difficult situations? This is a different question than the question students will be working on for their project, but for the purposes of the model, this is the question that has guided the work here. So as you can see, for the model and then also for their own project, students are going to respond to the essay question with 2 distinct stances on the question, and then they support each stance with evidence from the text. They can paraphrase, they can use direct quotes, they're going to be asked to use citations, and then also a combination of the direct quote from the text and also their own language to explain it a little further. So again, the purpose of this slide is to provide for students an example so they can start to visualize what they are working towards for today's session. After the model slide, you're going to have this page, which is a scaffold that goes a little deeper into the model. And the purpose of it is to really show to students how they are combining both text evidence and their own explanation, their own language. So with the scaffold, it kind of goes through these steps, starting with the essay question above, then the stance or the perspective that the students write in response, and then it has these 2 steps. First, it displays the direct citation from the text, and then it shows for this last piece how students can take the direct citation and add in their own language. So really what you're doing here with students is focusing in on where the writer and the model added in their own words. One thing you might want to do to make this very clear to students is have them on the slide go ahead and highlight or mark up the parts of the text that are the original language and not part of the citation, so they see the distinction between the 2. So for this example, I'm just highlighting where the writer has used their original language, and then the students have an example. The blue is the original language, and anything else is the direct quote, just so they get a visual of what that distinction is. After the scaffold, you're going to come to the project page, and here is what students will be completing for their project. You'll see here the essay question, which is different from the model. Does practice always lead to a better performance? And then you have the different components of the project that students are going to complete. So there's a few ways that we could differentiate this project component. As you can see, this is the default model, and it comes with these perspectives kind of preloaded. So you have the yes, practice always leads to a better performance, and no, practice does not always lead to a better performance. And then the main task for the students is finding the evidence and writing it below with, again, some of their own analysis and explanation. So this is one version, right? If you wanted to differentiate, and maybe for students at kind of a higher level of independence, you could remove here these preloaded responses and actually have students respond with their original language to this essay question prompt. You do want to get them towards kind of the yes and the no, but they can phrase it in a way that's unique to them. So that's one way, again, for students who are more independent to kind of meet them at the level that they're at. If students might need a little bit of support beyond what was in kind of the baseline model, one thing you could do is fill in the first evidence and provide an example, and that can kind of get them on their way. They can kind of see what type of evidence would fit with this essay question and this response, and that hopefully gives them a better understanding of what they can do independently on their own. Another trick that I use sometimes if students are feeling overwhelmed by the task and they are looking for evidence but are struggling is I might actually find the chunk of the text where I know some of the evidence is and just give them a little bit of a hint, a little bit of hurdle help. Hey, it's in these paragraphs, just reread those, scan, and look for that evidence. And that kind of helps them to kind of get on their way if they're feeling very stuck in those first few steps. So that's another hint, is to find the section of the text where the evidence will be, give them a little bit of a hint, and have them kind of build their confidence from there. So again, this is the project component that the students will be completing. And another thing to show, as you know, throughout this week, I've been using this document to track our before and after reading activities, and I added to it for day 5 if you'd like them, if you're doing something similar and would like them to continue with their project on the same document. So I just adapted the model from the slide deck onto the Google Doc. So we have the essay question here, and then I created some columns for them to write in the evidence for the yes stance and the no stance. And then below is a link to the full text so that they can really easily go back, open up the text, and start to look for their evidence. So this is, again, just a way if you wanted to depart from the slide deck and have everything on one Google document for the students to work on, might make things a little bit easier and help them stay organized with everything. So that is the overview for day 5. And good luck completing the project with the students.